Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I have on the show for the third time. Third time is a charm. We're going about Rich King today, but Rich Hill from RK Athletics. How's it going today?
I am doing fantastic today, Matt. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, and you know what?
The pleasure is all yours.
Yeah, we've had a couple of episodes, and we've gotten into your personal training and such. I wanted to give you an opportunity to come on because I'm a big fan of pro wrestling, and I know you are. And beyond that, you were literally a pro wrestler. So, who's in the house today? It's Rich King, as we mentioned. So you have this this other profession that you do outside of the personal training realm, and it is in fact professional wrestler. I really want to get into this. I'm excited. We literally have not talked about this other than
not enough.
Yeah, exactly. I've confirmed that you are a pro wrestler. I've followed you on Instagram, which is a different follow other than your RK Athletics 1, which is a fantastic follow plug for you there. But yeah, okay, let's start from the beginning. Like, when did wrestling come into your life? When did you turn it on the TV? Who did you see? Like, what is your origin story with professional wrestling?
For professional wrestling, like my earliest memory was being at one of my best friend's house. And like, I don't know how we got into it necessarily, but I think it started with like a PlayStation game or like an N64 game, WWF Warzone. Like we played it all the time. We made our own little guys so we could fight everybody. But I also vividly remember watching like a lot of tapes of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like they used to have these compilation VHSs with like moments. It wasn't necessarily even matches. It was just like a half an hour of like their top moments from the year. So it's like the three videos had like so much interlap together, but like it just clicked with me, and that's how I remember getting into wrestling. And then it was history ever since. Like I fell in love with it like for my entire life, and obviously like into my adult life now that I'm doing it, I love it even more because now I understand it a little bit more, and I've met a lot of cool people along the way in the wrestling business. So
it's amazing. So yeah, the old VHS. I mean, we're dating ourselves here. I think I forget. Like, can you disclose how old you are?
I was 8 years old at the time, so I'm 32 now.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So I definitely got some years on you. Yeah, and for me, I can remember. It's so funny because professional wrestling is so unique to any other form of art, entertainment, movies, anything. It's just it's its own thing, right? And I remember I turned on same thing, 8 years old. This would have been like 1988, 89, and I think it was Blue Blazer. So Owen Hart was doing a pre-tape interview before he went out to the ring to face Mr. Perfect. And that was the first and I was just like, what am I watching? And it was just so amazing. And after that, I was hooked. And of course, I had to go through the whole, it's fake, don't you? And all that kind of stuff. And, I just, I love that old 90s wrestling, the Hulk Hogan era. And, it was great for me when Stone Cold Steve Austin did come, because all of a sudden it went from like that 80s wrestling boom where it was mainstream, kind of went back into hiding. And then by like the end of the 90s, like 97-ish to 2000 and beyond, it was like mainstream again, man. You could buy. I remember I bought either a Hardy Boys or something like a VHS at a gas station. You know what I mean? There was like the Stone Cold, the DX shirts, like any retailer, you could find them anywhere. So what a time that was. Yeah. So Steve Austin was a big draw for you. You were wearing a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson hat, of course. Crazy time. The fact that they were both essentially in their prime at the same time and had just a storied, the trilogy of WrestleMania matches and such. Super rad, man. Okay, so where did it start for you as far as like, hey, I'm gonna do this for a living. I'm gonna go to, like, how did that come and where did you train? So many questions.
For sure. So like when I first thought like I have to do this was probably when I was like 9 or 10 years old.
Nice. Okay.
I always envisioned myself as a professional wrestler. I always viewed myself as being able to do this and have a career in it. Now, like you said, wrestling goes through peaks and valleys where like I think the early 90s, like when you discovered it, it was much more geared towards children, right? And then it kind of sank back down because like you had those bigger than life characters kind of disappear. Guys like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart that a lot of people, look on very fondly now, they didn't have the same type of character that like a Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior did. So it's like you saw that popularity kind of dip and it became kind of just that butt end of the joke.
Right.
But then come like 97, 98 as the NWO came in, as Stone Cold came in, Now they're breaking down the ceiling of like, this isn't for kids anymore. They're seeing ass, and they're saying bad words, and they're doing all this crazy stuff. They're running over limos with trucks and
drinking
spray painting
beer
people and drinking beer and flipping people off. Like I'm 8 years old at the time. I shouldn't be watching people flipping people off.
Right.
So it's like you go through that big boom period where a lot of the kids that grew up watching like Hulk Hogan are now teenagers and they're watching Austin. Well, I was a kid watching Austin.
Yeah, right.
So it's like you have that, and then it ramped up into like the ruthless aggression area after WCW disappeared. And as we went into like John Cena's rise and Randy Orton coming in and Brock Lesnar and these guys. So I kind of grew up into that phase. And then when a lot of those guys started disappearing from wrestling, so like Brock Lesnar went to the UFC, you saw The Rock go to Hollywood, Stone Cold retired because of his neck, and it started to be a little bit more geared towards kids again. And I kind of fell out of it.
Right.
So that's also like the teenage style, because it wasn't that cool as a teenager to be like, yeah, I'm into wrestling, because the UFC started up.
Yeah.
And I remember being like ground floor watching The Ultimate Fighter and just falling in love with the UFC in that situation, because it was like, it was another variation of wrestling, right? But this one's like they're actually punching each other.
Right.
So then I got all in on the UFC side of things, and I looked at it like, hey, you know what? Once I graduate high school, I can go into MMA, and then I can use that to go into WWE, right?
Interesting.
So once I got out of high school, that I think it was the year before I got out of high school, the Chris Benoit incident happened.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And as taboo as it is to say, like, I was a huge Chris Benoit fan. He was from Edmonton, which is where I wanted to live.
Yeah.
He went through kind of everything that I did. He was an undersized guy that kind of built up a body and built up like this huge reputation. He was everything I wanted to be in wrestling. When that whole situation happened, that really kind of destroyed wrestling for me. So I got completely out of it. Like, I would follow it online a little bit, but I wasn't going out of my way to watch pay-per-views or watch Raw or anything like that. It was very kind of to the outside from like 2000, I want to say like 2008 to about all the way up to what year was it? 2016 almost. So
wow. Okay.
Almost 8 years of like not really watching, but following like auxiliary style, right?
Totally.
2016, me and a couple buddies, we went to a show here in Edmonton. We had a blast, like got way too drunk. But I remember I was it got me right back into wrestling. I was back invested, and I was just like trying to catch up with everything that happened in the last couple of years, because there's so much that I don't even remember from those years that I still need to go back and look at. But it was 2 years later. I've been listening to podcasts. I've been watching wrestling. I'm a bit older. At the time, I had a girlfriend living in a different country. She was going to school there. So she was going to be there for, I think, 2-3 years, something like that. And I was driving down to a funeral. And I just thought to myself, like, I got to do this. So as I was driving, shouldn't admit to this, I looked up Edmonton pro wrestling schools. And I found one called Monster Pro Wrestling. And I sent an email off, and on the Monday they got back to me with the date of their next mini camp, asked me to check out the place beforehand. It was in a shared space where there was a wrestling ring and then a car auto body shop.
No way. That's
attached
awesome.
to it.
So cool.
So it stunk, like it was bad like gas some days, like like paint. But like that's wrestling, man. You gotta find ways to make it work. And after that, I was all in. I signed up, and 2018 I started my wrestling career. 20 years later.
20 years later. So quite the journey, man. I didn't realize the 8 years of like you say, auxiliary sort of on the periphery of your, you're keeping your eye on it, but just sort of over here, right? So interesting story. Yeah, there's definitely there's some good stuff in there you missed out on, like the whole CM Punk run. Definitely worthwhile looking back if you haven't already looked at it.
Like, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan,
Daniel Bryan.
Shield.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Good
Um,
point. Yeah.
there's so many matches that there's so much content that I need to go back and watch.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
just like not just for the storyline because I love the storyline, but for the matches as well, right? Like
Oh yeah.
I missed kind of the rise of Bray Wyatt in that way as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I missed a lot of like Randy Orton and John Cena's feuds.
Yeah. Right.
People kind of underrate now, but from the auxiliary, it looked like it was pretty good. So
Right. Yeah. And very lengthy, a lot of story, kept coming back to that
yeah,
rivalry, right? Which is cool. Like a cornerstone rivalry. How would you describe your style? Like I'm picturing, so yeah, you got some Benoit, like, was there like a guy like Daniel Bryan that sort of took uh, the reins as far as an inspiration for you? Like, how would you describe your in-ring style?
my in-ring style, like yeah, I would say that I am very much in the again, taboo to say, but very much like the Benoit Dean Malenko kind of mold. You won't see me doing a ton of flips by any means. I try to keep my feet on the ground to mitigate the risks. But yeah, a lot of technical wrestling, especially lately. I've been very much into a little bit more of the goofy stuff. I like to have a little bit more fun with it with my partners in crime, and we have a lot of fun with it. So my big mentality isn't necessarily like let's have the best technical wrestling match like it used to be. Now it's like, hey, what are people going to be talking about after this? How can we be
Yeah.
memorable for something that's not just doing moonsaults and doing swantons all day, right?
Totally.
It's like, let's be individualized, let's be a little bit different. And how can we be different in this setting?
So more of the character stuff, right? Like leave them
A lot
like,
more of the character stuff. Yeah.
honestly, dude, and like what you're talking about before with the VHSs, like Stone Cold, it's moments. Like they have this compilation of moments. There's a degree of matches. They'll show clips of matches, but
Yeah.
honestly, it's like, that is like when I think of like WrestleMania, they talk about WrestleMania moments.
Yeah.
What did you have your WrestleMania moment? It's not so much did you have your WrestleMania match? Of course, it's a big thing, but yeah, for sure, dude. And it is even like in any other art medium. Like for me, it's like movies. I'll remember moments of movies. I'll remember songs off albums, right? So it's I could see where you're getting. You mentioned a couple of guys that you have like a faction. Like what do you? Okay, cool. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we are the RADz. We started off together in Monster Pro Wrestling. Again, we all kind of came up together, and really like a lot of the relationships formed through just like going on road trips together. These were guys that got along really well. So like for me, Rich King, there's Mitch Clark, who's former UFC fighter. We have T.Y. Jackson, who's the youngest member and probably one of the best wrestlers in our group. We have probably one of my best friends, Lumberjack Larry. We have myself, and then we have our manager extraordinaire, Mr. Judge Ben Omen.
Yes.
So
Ben
yeah,
Omen.
Ben the Judge, yeah.
Ben the Judge.
So yeah, we have a nice little stable going. We've won championships in almost every promotion we've been in.
Rad.
Our motto is to touch tips, shake hips, and win championships. So
I love it. Touch tips. That's bordering on like the scissor me thing. You could get that catch that on pretty good. I bet.
Yeah, we started that much earlier in the year than I think they started the scissoring thing.
Interesting. It's
So
smart, man.
we'll have to put up a poll. Do people want to be touching tips, or do you
want to scissor? Right.
So,
you should do that, man. Then
wrestling great debates.
Yeah, right. And then see if it'd be cool if you get some kind of response from them. They come to straighten you out or tempt you. Anyways, that's so funny, man. Great. So yeah, you got a group of guys. I imagine there's like you always hear about the old road stories because a huge part of wrestling that people perhaps don't know about. I mean, if you aren't a pro wrestling fan, how would you? Is the amount of travel that happens, an amount of actual, not necessarily flying travel, like in the car, right? And that's where the time to, review what happened with the matches, plan promos, many different things. So it sounds like you guys are you all in like a van together when you're traveling from city to city? What does that look like?
I'm usually the driver in my truck, much to the chagrin of a lot of promoters because trucks typically eat a lot more gas than cars do. But everyone else has a very unreliable car. outside of Mitch, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like a lot of there is a lot of travel, especially in Western Canada, especially in Alberta, because it's 4 hours to the closest city for us. A lot of times in the States, you can drive 2 hours to a similar sized city, right?
Yeah,
Or
right. Exactly.
you can do 3 shows in your own city in like 3 days. Whereas like,
Totally. Yeah.
you can't do so many shows in Edmonton because there's only so many wrestling fans. So it's like now we have to go to places like Lloydminster and Radway and Calgary. And, then if you want to go further, you go to Saskatoon. If you want to go even further, there's Winnipeg, which is a 15-hour one-way drive.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be committed to doing these things. So like it's important when you're doing those trips to make sure that you're enjoying yourself. Like I'm not 21. I don't have a ton of time in wrestling. So I
Yeah.
want to enjoy my trips. I want to make sure that I'm with people that I actually like, that I can relate to. And it's not that I'm not giving other people a chance, because I'm sure if I drove in a car with a bunch of people that I haven't ever done that before with, probably have a good time. But like, I know that with these guys, we always have a blast. It's always something to kind of talk about after the fact. And we've even taken that a step further by doing kind of an online like bit show in a way.
Tremendous.
So it's called Tales from the Undercard. It's on YouTube. So it melds together what we're doing in wrestling along with, what we find funny.
I
So
love it.
very much in if people are following them, the being the elite
Being
kind
the
of
elite.
style,
Yeah, I was going to
like
suggest. Yeah.
the Long Island Tales
Yeah. Yeah.
Rider. So
Yeah.
kind
That's
of
right.
blending those in together where it's, a little bit of what just stupid fun.
Yeah.
So
Like
we've had a lot of moments this last year that we've enjoyed. And a lot of that comes just from our road trips.
yeah. Right. So it's like a little bit of behind the scenes mixed with like some actual character development, because you're goofing off a little bit. Right. Yeah. So,
Because
dude,
in indie wrestling, you have 15 minutes to go out there, do your
yeah.
thing, and you don't like it's not a weekly show. You don't have the same people
Right.
come in who know you or
Good
know
point.
who you're all about or have 2 years of exposition of why your character's this way. It's, hey, I've never seen this guy before. You have 15 minutes, go. So it's like
Totally.
if
Yeah.
we can have a YouTube platform and use that, and we use that in our promotion material,
Yeah.
hopefully people from that place will actually see this either before or after and kind of have a better understanding of what we're doing.
I love it. That's super cool. We'll put that in the show notes as well. A couple questions for you before we get you out of here. I know you're on a bit of a timeline here. So, what was your favorite or biggest show that you've been on? Like, is there one that really stands out? You're like, holy shit, Full House. Sort of favorite city. Like, is there what would you narrow down to, like something that really stands out for you as far as a show you've been on?
Probably the coolest setup that I've been part of so far was for Love Pro Wrestling here in Edmonton.
Okay.
They're at the Rec Room in the event center.
Oh, crazy. Cool.
So it's a very, very cool and unique venue.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's like something else to be part of, right? So we do that we do that pretty much monthly at this point.
No way.
And Spencer, the owner, he puts in a lot of hard work and brings in a lot of talented people and has given me an opportunity, which I'm very thankful for. So those are always cool ones to be part of. Just like the venue and the aesthetic alone are very, very cool that way. But probably the biggest show that I've been part of was in Real Canadian Wrestling. They actually brought in John Morrison.
Yes.
Johnny Nitro, Johnny
Yeah.
Elite.
Johnny Elite. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So T.Y. Jackson actually had a match with him. I was injured at the time. I separated my shoulder earlier this year. But I was on the outside with him, so I was kind of involved just little bits and pieces. But that was probably one of the most fun matches I've ever been part of. One of the most fun events I've ever been a part of.
Very cool. That bled into my next question. I was going to see if you had crossed paths with any other wrestlers that were in the twilight of their career or somebody that was kind of bouncing back, because the indie scene is massive now. It's not quite like what it used to be. There's some big names that come through. What is, other than John Morrison, is there anybody else that you've crossed paths with?
Yeah, there's been quite a few, like both independent, local, and like national, but just due to time's sake, like nationally, I just had a match with the Bollywood Boys not too long ago.
Yes.
They're
from Vancouver, right?
They're from Vancouver. Yeah.
Cool.
Just had an interaction with Harry Smith, Davey Boy Jr.'s.
Wow.
Davey Boy Jr. from WWE. Boy's son.
Wow.
I was able to have a wrestling match with Dynamite Kid's nephews.
No way.
Earlier this year, I was in a tag team match with Fandango. So like
that is crazy.
I've had plenty of opportunities to to interact and be part of these things.
Yeah.
With people that have had a national spotlight, and that's not even including people that have just been on the show.
Right.
So I was on a show where Lance Storm was there, so it's cool to meet him.
Very cool.
You know, tons of opportunities in that sense. So it's been very, very cool.
Very cool. Final question for you, Rich King, we should say. And if I wonder if you can do it in like get like sort of a promo vibe to it, where can we find you online? And just some final words as well. If somebody wants to give you a follow, and if they don't want to give you a follow, you might want to get something off your chest.
Well, if they don't want to give me a follow, they can suck my butt, number one, because they're probably a nerd that lives in their parents' basement that has no friends. So if you want to follow somebody that's going to be your absolute favorite professional wrestler, if you want to follow the RADz, which are going to be the top group in professional wrestling in 2023, we've already won championships in every promotion, and it's only going to get better as you go along. You can follow me at RK_wrestling on Instagram and on Facebook. You get kind of the same deal. And of course, you can watch all the shenanigans we get up to on Tales from the Undercard on YouTube.
Rad. Thanks so much for coming on, Rich. We'll definitely be watching you progress. I'm liking the sounds of this YouTube channel. And RK_wrestling, the RADz. Is it RADz with 1D?
RADz.
Oh,
capital R,
Rad. Yeah.
capital A, capital D.
Yeah.
Z.
Rad. That's easy to find out. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for coming on. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Matt.